Hi everyone, my name is Michael and I'm a horn player in the Boston Symphony. What I just played for you just now was the opening horn solo to Brahms' second piano concerto. Now I'm the third horn, so you'd think, why am I playing a first horn excerpt? Well, every now and then, if one of the first horns is gone, we do a little shuffle and I move over to play the first horn part, which I did this last summer actually, so it's fresh on my mind. Believe it or not, the third horn part in this piece is actually kind of a more involved part than the principal part, but the first horn part is important because it literally starts the piece, just like that, nothing else happening. The first horn just out of nowhere starts playing, and then the piano comes in, and the horn comes back in. One of the things that's really cool about Brahms' concerti in general is that, unlike Mozart or Beethoven, where in Mozart you'd have the soloist and then the orchestra, and they don't work together a lot. They kind of take turns playing some really cool stuff. In Brahms, he writes his concerti like symphonies, in that everybody's participating all the time. The piano soloist and the orchestra kind of have a conversation throughout the entire thing. That makes it really, really fun. And one of the interesting parts about this is, like a lot of pieces, you hear the soloists come in, and especially with the piano, because they're fixed pitch, you just go, okay, I'll play with them. And this one is kind of interesting because the first horn comes in all by themselves, and then the piano comes in. Whereas usually, okay, whatever, if the clarinet comes in after you, if you're just that much sharp or flat or whatever, it's fine, they'll match you. The piano doesn't, so you have to figure out really fast in rehearsal where the piano is. Otherwise, you're going to have the piano come crashing in, and turns out you weren't as in tune as you thought you were. So that's one of the kind of dicey things that you have to figure out as the first horn in this. I'll play a little bit of the third horn solo too. It's basically the same, but it's in a different key. So it's funny, you think, why would the first horn play it in the lower key and then the third horn plays it? Back in the day when Brahms was writing, and his predecessors before him, these things right here, valves, did not exist. It was just one length of tubing, and depending on what notes they wanted, they would pitch it differently. So the opening is in B flat basso, which is this super, super long instrument. So it gets a warmer, darker sound, so it's great for that opening. The third horn part, which I just played, is actually in F, so it's a little bit brighter sound in the same way, because the trumpet's a shorter instrument, it's a brighter sound than, for example, a tuba. These different personalities and characteristics, Brahms really made the most of them. If there were no valves on the instrument at all, it would sound something like this. So that's a little funky, so we're happy to use valves. It's a pretty simple solo in that respect. One of the interesting things is somehow conductors and soloists and horn players have some different ideas about particularly how the opening could go. Some players and conductors have conversations trying to figure out, okay, well, do we want to just play it really straight like I first played it? Or some soloists particularly want a more dramatic lead in. Sorry, a little water in the horn. It's cold. If you haven't noticed my lovely backdrop I have here, my basement isn't my usual practice spot, but I have a 2-year-old who's sleeping right now. And for all you parents out there, you can imagine that I would rather practice outside in the snow than wake up a 2-year-old, so I'm down here in the dungeon. So there's always kind of this conversation about how that opening should be played, and then later on how the third horn solo should be played, kind of how schmaltzy you want it. And every time we've done it with different conductors and soloists, we find a different balance, and it's fantastic no matter how we do it. There's a couple of different ways we can practice this. Obviously, pitch has to be good, rhythm has to be good, although those are pretty simple. The biggest pitfall for horn players is the tendency to twah, which is which makes it sound kind of seasick, and that's not very much fun. So there's kind of a few and make sure my pitch is really good too. If I want to really make myself uncomfortable, I can use this thing. This is basically just a rim of a mouthpiece that was cut off of a mouthpiece, and it's on a stick, so it's easier to hold. This makes me work really, really hard to make sure that my air is moving really well and that I'm connecting stuff, and it's really, really humbling. And brass players kind of all over the place, trumpet players, anybody can use one of these. So it requires a lot more air to get the same kind of vibration. And if I get a little lazy on my air, then it's really easy for my pitch to change, or the buzz will just stop speaking because there's absolutely no resistance to be found here. So those are a couple of really good ways to practice it. And of course, especially with the third horn part, because there's woodwinds and piano and all sorts of stuff happening at that point, you have to really know the part and know kind of where to lift and where to put it. One of the things that's so great about Brahms, I think, is this amazing sound that he gets out of the orchestra. If you think about a picture of Brahms, long beard, rather portly guy, the image you would have of him and the kind of sound, this kind of Santa Claus-y figure, is really this nice warmth of sound that we get out of the orchestra, which makes it so wonderful. I'll play both of them one more time. One other thing I failed to mention before, it's really important to get this kind of warm feeling to not have a giant button on the front of the note. So heavy articulation, you get that kind of honk on the front of the sound. It's not fantastic, and it's definitely not the Brahms style. So I practice both of these solos air attacking a lot of notes, so without any articulation at all, just I figure if I can air attack them with absolutely no articulation, adding a little bit of light articulation should be a pretty safe bet on the job. And plus it helps me know exactly when my air is going to make the note speak and when it isn't, which means I can taper these notes kind of down to nowhere, which is really effective in the concert hall. I have to say, this solo and this piece in general is one of my favorite works ever to play. It's hard to pick a favorite Brahms because they're all fantastic. But this one would certainly be the top of my list, and it's always a pleasure to play it. We're really excited to come back to work, hopefully soon, whatever that is, and we'll look forward to seeing all you soon. Thank you.